And welcome back to another episode. This episode I'm very excited about because I have a very special guest, Nick Ross. A little bit about Nick Ross. The reason why we know each other is because he's been a mentor of mine for a couple years. But over a period of time, this guy right here, just by being the amazing person that he is, has completely helped me level up as a person. Not only professionally, but personally as well. He's one of those mentors, just like I am with a lot of you guys, where I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear. And there's a lot of times this guy right here has called me out my shit rightfully and has helped me grow significantly. And I'm really excited for him to share his story. A lot of times you guys get inspired by hearing stories from other people, seeing yourself in them, and it gives you courage to create that change. Not only are we here to help you get the information you need to become the CEO of your health, but also to get you around people that inspire you to create the change that you need to. And I can't think of a better person than Nick. All right, Nick, can you do me a favor? For those that have no idea who you are, introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, thank you for that beautiful introduction. I feel the same exact way about you. You know, when you're a mentor, one of the things that keeps you going is watching the success of the people that you help. Because when you pour into someone else's cup and you watch them level up and go on to impact other people, it also fills up your cup, and that gives you fulfillment. And your success has allowed me to be more confident in myself, you going out there and implementing and being actionable, just growing your business and seeing everything that you've grown over the last couple of years. So I always need to make sure I say thank you. I'm so grateful for you, and I'm grateful to talk to your listeners today. And as you know, it's all about impact. And if we can impact one life today, then both of us can go to sleep tonight knowing we did our job. So Let's get into it. My story. Yeah. Thank you. You know, I like to start at the beginning because it's going to set up a lot of what we're inevitably going to talk about here today. I was raised from a single mother on a horse farm, 75-acre horse farm in the Poconos in Pennsylvania. And if you know anything about being a farmer or living on a horse farm, you usually have lots of siblings because you're doing all the work. And so my whole entire life, I was working on this horse farm really since the age of 6 years old. And I quickly figured out that if I want to be able to get off the horse farm, then I need to be involved in extracurricular activities. So sports was my whole life. I played sports nonstop because I was practice and traveling. It means I wasn't mucking horse manure or building fences or mowing, 50 acres of grass. And that was my life. That was all I ever wanted to do my whole entire life was to be a professional athlete, because in the early 80s, early 90s, that's what I identified with as wealth and being able to help your family out and be able to provide, because, you think, this horse farm, you're making a lot of money, but we were struggling. I grew up a poor farm boy my whole entire life. So fast forward, all I wanted to do was become a professional hockey player. And at the age of 16, I was involved in a car accident with another 16-year-old. I wasn't driving, and we were T-boned at 65 miles an hour. And that car folded up like a V right where we got hit. I was hitting the passenger side. I don't remember anything. I was ripped out of that car with jaws of life. And long story short, that was the end of my professional hockey career. And I became very angry. I became a very violent youth, just lashing out at the world, because the only thing, the only plan, the only dream that I had ever had been taken away from me at no fault of my own. And what I did, and maybe we can talk about this a little bit later, is I suffered from the golden child syndrome. And so there was someone in my life. I loved my mother the most, but I yearned for my father's love more, because my father was never in my life. My father was an alcoholic, a drug addict. He was in jail my whole entire life. He never showed up to any of my games, never showed up to any of my practices. And what I had to do is sacrifice bits and pieces of myself to become someone else to earn my father's love. And so what happened is that I ended up adopting his identity, and I became a drug user. I became an alcoholic to cope with the pain. It was my coping mechanism. We call this hedonistic behavior, this seeking of pleasure, this seeking of soothing tactics to avoid the pain in our life. And the reason that I start all the way there is because from the age of 16 to the age of 32, that was the life I lived. I never evolved past that. I had some successes. I climbed the corporate ladder. I graduated college. I had some, corporate trophies, so to speak, on the wall, on the mantle, but they were all old and dusty. And one of the sayings that resonates most with me still to this day is that success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And I did have some success, but I was still coping. I was womanizing. I was drinking. I was serial dating. I was at every event because I worked in the music industry and I lived a rock and roll lifestyle. I was a single bachelor male, and I lived this life from really the age of 16 to the age of 32. And the reason I set all that up is because in March 24th of 2016, I woke up and I just had this voice in my heart and in my head. It was unfamiliar. It wasn't my voice. It wasn't the voice of someone that I knew, but it was saying something is wrong. Something is terribly wrong. And I had this lump in my throat for a couple weeks, and that voice said you had cancer. And I know that sounds dramatic, but that is exactly what happened to me. And I'm very thankful to this day for that voice, for that calling that I did pay attention to. And so at the age of 32, you think like you're rock solid, nothing's going to hurt you. I didn't even have a general doctor. I had insurance, but I never even went to the doctor ever. So that's what I did. I finally went and saw a doctor. She said, Nick, you're fine. You had the flu the week before. The week before that, you had 4 wisdom teeth surgically removed. You just have some bacteria in there. You have an infection. Here's some antibiotics. Go home. You're going to be fine. But something still was telling me something was wrong. So I remember this night vividly. Information plus emotion equals long-term memory. I'll never forget this night. I went home, did the same things I always did, smoking a pack of Reds for like 16 years of smoking cigarettes, drinking Jameson, playing some Madden, doing all the things that I always did, these hedonistic behaviors to avoid pain and avoid reality. And about 11 o'clock at night, I took a shower. And for whatever reason, I never did this before. When I got out of the shower, I just decided to examine myself. And when I did that, I found a lump in my testicle going the opposite direction. And I remember, like, when they say you could feel your heart sink into your stomach, that's exactly what happened.
Oh,
From there, I did what you're never supposed to do, which is I went on WebMD. Right? And it's like 12 o'clock at night. I'm alone in my shitty little 1-bedroom apartment in East Nashville. And it basically said, if you touch this lump and it hurts, don't worry. It's not a tumor, but go to a urologist. But if you do touch it and it does not hurt, it is some kind of tumor. We don't know if it's benign or cancerous, but you need to go see a doctor either way immediately. And this was a Thursday night. So I woke up Friday morning, called a network of urologists called Urology Associates. And mind you, this is a Friday morning. So I'm on the phone with the receptionist crying, pleading to get an appointment. She's like, we're all booked up. It's Friday. It's the busiest time of the week for us. And I'm just begging her to find me an appointment. And so she calls me back like an hour later. I'll never forget this gentleman's name because he was a saint. His name was Dr. Balsante, and he forgoed his lunch to see me. So I quickly make the 45-minute drive down there. It's incredibly embarrassing. You got to derobe. There's this man examining you. You're just like, what the hell is going on with my life? And I'll never forget the moment he looked up, and I just knew that I had cancer. And he said, look, we need to go get some images done. We'll get those examined and we'll call you on Monday. So I go through that whole process, get back into my car, drive back to my shitty apartment. And as soon as I walked in that apartment, my cell phone rang, and it was Dr. Balsante. And I know this now, just from having been through this and knowing others that have been through this. It's not ethical for them to call you and give you such devastating news. But that's when I got the message that, Nick, you have cancer and you have surgery on Monday. It's 8 years later in March. It's still one of the heaviest memories of my life. And in that moment, all I could think of was, I did this to myself, that I deserved this because of my lifestyle. And here I am at 32 years old, and asking myself, am I going to die an inconsequential man? A man that had amounted to nothing, a man that there would have been no rippling of who I was throughout eternity. There would have been no legacy. I didn't have nothing. I didn't have family. I had my mom and my grandmother. I didn't have any kids. I didn't have a girlfriend. I had a job I hated. I had an apartment I never wanted to be in because I just didn't own anything. I was just not happy whatsoever. And that was the beginning of the rest of my life.
Wow. Oh my gosh, what a story. I've heard this story I don't know how many times, and it's still hanging on every single word. Oh my gosh. So I want to go back to what you were talking about before, where you were talking about, did I do this to myself? Right? When you say that, what do you mean in terms of, did I do this to myself? Is it from like just your like habits every single day? Is it just because you thought it was karma? What was going on through your head?
We will never know with testicular cancer. There's a few cancers. There's really no cause and effect. It's not like, you had mouth cancer or lip cancer or throat cancer because you chewed, or you have lung cancer because you smoked cigarettes, or you have prostate cancer because you ate like a jerk your whole entire life and ate carcinogenic things. At the end of the day, I have no real proof of why I got cancer. If I were to really summarize, it was stress. I lived in a very chaotic and a very stressful state for a really long time. Like I had adopted to it to become normalcy. But also just because of my hedonistic behaviors. Like I was living a lifestyle, smoking a pack of cigarettes every day. I was drinking a half a bottle of Jameson every day. I was going out to the bars and the clubs in Nashville and Hollywood and Vegas and all these places I lived 5-6 nights a week. And I knew better because I saw what it did to my father. And this is called being willfully blind. I knew I should have done something. I knew I should have changed my life. I knew that, but I chose to turn my eye. And that is a sin of omission. That's arguably the worst type of sin that there is. That you could have done something to prevent it from happening. You could have stopped the crime, but you watched the crime happen anyways. And that creates a lot of shame. It took me a long time, guys, to process that amount of shame. Because when you get cancer, man, you affect not only your life, but the lives of a lot of other people. My bosses, my coworkers, my managers, my mom, my grandmother, my friends that had to rush me to the ER. Like when I was battling chemotherapy, like a lot of people are affected by the lifetime of decisions that I made. And when we talk about shame and we talk about guilt and we talk about anger and we talk about fear and we talk about all of these neurotic emotions, the only thing below shame is death. When we talk about the 12 levels of consciousness, if you're constantly in a negative and neurotic state and negative neurotic emotions, and you have a very high sensitivity to negative emotions, you create your own neurotic sickness. And I had a lot of shame for my lifestyle. I knew what I was doing. I knew that I always we all have this calling. We all have this whispering that we could do more, we could be more, we can expand our container, we can impact. Like I used to look at people that were so successful and I was like, man, I can do that. I can be him. But then I just never did. I went home, I went out, and I did the same damn thing every single day. And if you live there long enough, this is why people commit suicide. Shame. It is a very toxic emotion. And again, when we think about chronic disease, if you're constantly in those states with your physiology, with your emotions, with your thinking patterns, with your language patterns, you will create chronic disease in yourself. You will create a neurotic sickness.
100%. 100%. Okay, so obviously you didn't stay in that shame. Otherwise you wouldn't be here today, making an impact in people's lives like you have with mine. So what was that turning point? What made you make that change?
Yeah. I've been studying a lot lately. An author called Frederick Dotson. He wrote a book called The 12 Levels of Consciousness, or The 12 Levels of Energy. And in order for us to get to abundance, which is a a higher level, higher degree of consciousness and thinking and our being and our state, the only way to abundance in our life is through acceptance. That's it. The pathway to the type of abundance that you want in your life, more money, more love, more joy, more fulfillment, more creativity, whatever you want, you have to accept what happened to you. You have to accept what you did to yourself. You have to accept what you did to others. You have to accept what others did to you. That's the only way. And like, I didn't know that while going through cancer. I just wanted to live. I just wanted to survive. I just wanted to make sure I didn't leave this earth before my mom. Like, that was the most, like, because I know if I was gone, she would be gone shortly after. And that's all I wanted. So like, I didn't have all of this NLP, self-help, self-development stuff figured out. You know, I had to hit rock bottom. I really had to, like, my life got way worse after cancer. It didn't immediately get better. And so I had to do a lot of unpacking of pain, because inside that pain lays so much potential. And so many of us, because of this hedonistic, pleasure-seeking behavior, we never take the time to actually do the thought exercises or the unpacking of the pain, the digging into the pain, because yeah, it hurts. It really hurts. But while I sat on a chemo ward floor for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, every other week for 2 months, which is the heaviest amount of chemo that they can give a 32-year-old male in the shortest amount of time possible. Like, if you take testicular cancer on the spectrum of cancers, it's very curable. But every cancer tumor is made up of multiple cancer cells. And it just so happened that my tumor was made up of 3 different cancer cells. 2 of them were highly rare, highly aggressive killers. And it had formed itself in my lymphatic system, which is the drainage system for all of your organs. Which means if one little cancer cell broke off into my organs, I'm stage 4. Like,
wow.
I have an 8% chance of living. And my doctors told me, Nick, if you didn't come to us when you did, and you waited another 2 months, or you did not find this, if you just waited another 2 months, you would have been stage 4 and you would have had an 8% chance at life. And I knew that going into chemotherapy. And so like, I hope no one ever has to go through this, but most people don't realize this. When you're going through chemo, you're on a chemo ward floor. You're sitting in a chair, this massive floor with hundreds of other people going through cancer and going through chemo. And I'm there for 2 months. I'm clocking in and out like a job. I'm watching people in front of me wither away to literally a bag of bones. Day after day, I'm watching this one gentleman. I'll never forget him. Like, I just watched him die in front of me. I watched it. And I'm thinking, is this me? Am I next? Is this what's going to happen to me because of my behaviors? And while sitting in that chair, I had the hardest conversations with myself. Like, unpacking the trauma of my childhood and the loss and abandonment of my father in my life. And, you know, just accepting what happened, because I was so angry at so many people for so long for the abandonment in my life. And that neurotic emotion that I carried along with me for a long time caused a lot of stress. It caused the golden child syndrome, which caused the chronic disease. And I had to get to the bottom of all of that. And the first thing was to say, thank you, cancer. As ironic as that seems, as juxtaposed as that seems, I had to learn to say, this did not happen to me. This happened for me. Guys, if you take anything away from this podcast, I want you to write this down. I don't want you to ever forget it. It is not your conditions. It is your decisions. People run races with no legs. What is your excuse?
100%. It sounded like this whole process was acceptance. Another way of saying it is like ownership. And it wasn't necessarily in a point of like, you meant for this to happen, right? But it was your problem to solve, right? And obviously, again, like, we wouldn't be here today talking about this if you just went right back to your old life. And you said that you struggled for a little bit longer after cancer, things weren't solved. Do you recall that moment that it was just like a click of like, I need to get my shit together?
Yeah. It got worse because I didn't necessarily change my behaviors right away. Like it takes time. My doctor called me and he said, "Nick, you're cancer free." And it was about 5 or 6 o'clock at night. And I remember just being so happy because it was finally over. And so what I did is what I always did. I called my friends. I went out to celebrate. And I got my third DUI. And I was locked in jail less than 12 hours later. And I sat in that jail cell. No one knew where I was. No one knew what happened. The only reason that anyone even found me, because I was so broke from all the medical bills and the lack of work, that I couldn't even bail myself out. And my boss, because I hadn't showed up to work for days, literally started calling hospitals and the jails and finally found me and bailed me out. You know, I rarely talk about that because it's something I still carry shame, things I'm still unpacking in my life. Self-sabotage is really difficult. I think it's one of the most destructive things that people can do. You know, celebrating wins when they really shouldn't be. And that was my rock bottom. The reason that particular event changed my life, when I was growing up, my mom used to say this thing to me that would drive me crazy. She would say, "You're going to grow up to be just like your father." So when I finally got out of jail, I got back to my little shitty apartment. I didn't know what to do because I was facing a year in jail. I literally just got done beating cancer and I was about to spend a year in jail. I was about to lose my job, my car, my everything. So the only person that I knew that had enough experience to help me get out of that experience was my father. My father had 11 DUIs. 11. Seems impossible to do, but he did it. And he's the person that had to console me. And in that moment, I knew my mom was right. I had grown up to be just like my father. And that was the scariest thing in the world to me. And we can have dreams, we can have outcomes, we can have this destination that we want to head to. But sometimes it's a lot easier to change our lives by running away from the person that we don't want to be and the things that we'll no longer tolerate in our life. And that was the moment that I was like, I can't do this anymore. I refuse. And it was only very shortly after that I had decided, like, my hair was just finally growing back from losing it all. And I remember slightly after that looking in the mirror, and for the first time in my life, I could not recognize the person staring back at me in the mirror. I had lost my identity. And the only thing I could ring through my head is, "You're going to grow up to be just like your father. You're going to grow up to be just like your father." And I just got so angry. I just got so pissed off for greatness finally in my life that I said, I got to do something. So I called the healthiest and fittest person that I knew in Nashville. And I just said, "What do I have to do?" Because at this point, I have no hair. I had ballooned up in weight because I was getting bags of chemo and saline and steroids 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. So like my body just blew up. You know, we always think cancer patients will always like shrink down. So I was really overweight, no hair, hating the way that I look. And she said, "You need to hire a nutrition coach. In fact, you need to hire an online nutrition coach." And at that time, 7 years ago, I had no idea what that meant. But I just took action. I scraped together, like, my credit card was basically maxed out. And so I went on the app and like I increased the limit to like, there's like whatever it would give me to increase it. And I just paid the guy. And for the last 7 years, there's never been a day that I haven't worked with a nutrition coach. I was telling our clients this the other day. For 7 years straight, I've worked consistently every single day, every single month with a nutrition coach. And that nutrition coach changed my life. He is the person that saved my life because he gave me a purpose. He gave me a plan. He gave me a process. He gave me a framework. He gave me a support system. But he gave me the most, sorry guys, this is hard. He gave me the most beautiful gift that a man has ever given me, which is a belief. And that's how I met my future boss, Jason Phillips. That's how I got this amazing job that's changed my life financially. That's how I met you. That's how I am 6 months away from being a professional bodybuilder, 7 years removed from cancer diagnosis. That's how I speak on stages with some of the biggest names in the space, all because of just making a decision to take action and basically hire a mentor.
Yeah. Not a big deal at all. Just a little bit. You just achieved just a little bit. That's all. Okay, so I want to go back to the point where you were in debt. Like you just got out of jail, bailed out of jail. You were in debt from medical bills and everything. And I think one of the hardest things, especially when people are struggling, is investing in themselves. I think a lot of times it's belief that they're not worth it, right? Somebody who has failed over and over and over again, it's like, why even do it? Why do it? So I'm interested in hearing what was going through your head when you had the opportunity to, again, you were in debt, you're trying to increase your credit card limit. Like what was going through your head when you were in that moment of like, am I going to invest in myself or not?
Have you ever run out of money?
Oh yeah.
Did you get more back?
Yeah.
What happens when you run out of time?
Can't get more time back.
And now that's still to this day rings true. You know, financially, it's important, like, for me to mention this. One of the defining moments of change in my life, I believe in a communitarian approach to self-development. I don't believe, like the gurus and you go down to the Barnes and Noble and buy your little self-help book. They'll tell you that self-actualization is the way to your highest self, your highest potential, that you have to understand every bit and part of yourself. And you have to do all of this work, this trauma work, which is important in order to actually get to your highest self. But what I'm here to tell you is a communitarian approach to self-development is the cardinal meaning of life. This is how you change your life. This is how you change your family's life. This is how you end the generational curses. This is how you change your community. This is how you change your town, your city, your state, your nation, the world. Communitarian approach to self-development. And the reason I bring this up is because I honestly could not afford to pay the medical bills. Like you get $150,000 bill for chemo. You're like, what am I supposed to do with this? It's going to take me a lifetime to pay this off. Do I even want to be alive? Because I'm just going to be riddled in debt for so long. I wasn't working. My mom wasn't working because she was taking care of me. And so one of the hardest things that there is to do as a human being is to ask for help. We can ask for love, but it's a lot harder to ask for help. Mm-hmm. So I finally had to ask for help. I started to GoFundMe. I didn't want to do it, but I did it because my mom literally was begging me to, because we were in such a desperate financial state. And within 72 hours, that GoFundMe raised more money than I'm ever comfortable sharing. And I remember fundamentally just crying and bawling as I had the computer screen up, as I watched the money flow in, because people that I had gotten in fist fights with in high school, who I hadn't talked to in decades, donated. My high school principal, I'll never forget, I made that man's life a living hell for 4 years. He donated. People I hadn't spoken to forever, people anonymously, just people who were friends with my family that I never even met in my life donated. And that for me was like, and I was still sick then. Mm-hmm. I didn't come through the other side. That for me was like, wow, people are investing in me like I'm a stock, like I'm a business. And like, I owe it to them to beat this. I owe it to them to change my life. I owe it to them to become more. And that's when I created this promise that I have. And like, I want to share this with all of you. If you're struggling in life, like to get to where you want to go, to your destination, to your goal, to your core desires, one of the things that you're probably lacking is what's called an emotional driver. It's the actual fuel that fills up the tank that gets you to the doorstep of opportunity. And this is when I made my promise. And this is a promise that I refuse to break for anything or anyone. I have removed family members, best friends, coworkers, you name it. I have removed them from my circle of 5 if they ask me to break this promise. That's when I hit my hands and knees and I just surrendered to God for the first time in my life. I said, God, if you give me a second chance at life, I promise you that I will use my few gifts that you've given me to serve and to help other people. I had no idea how I was going to do that then. I had zero clue. I just wanted to live. But that promise and that emotional driver, I know if I keep that promise every single day, which is why I'm on this podcast, to impact lives and give back to others, that I will get to where I want to go. And so I focus on that communitarian approach to self-development, serving and impacting the lives of others, helping other people get what they want, because I understand it's proven every single time it showed up that if I help others get what they want, I will eventually get what I want. And so I don't know that I answered your question directly, but financially, other people helping me overcome that, because as stupid as it seems, like the biggest stress was the financial stress. Like, God forbid you ever have to deal with insurance companies that are sending you bills. No one can give you an answer, right? And so that platform like allowed me to get my life together, to understand that if I want to truly change my life, I need to seek help. And then finding that nutrition coach is what eventually allowed me to really fulfill on that promise to God. Because you guys, nutrition coaches, you saved my life. And so I'm doing everything that I can on a daily basis through our company, through platforms of social media, through public speaking, to serve and give back so nutrition coaches can impact as many people as possible.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And you answered my question beautifully. And I will say this too, is the approach, the communitarian approach that you're talking about, very much, it's just basically saying you can't do it alone. Get mentors, get help from other people that love you and want to support you. I'm definitely one of those people. I've admitted it multiple times. I'm really quite stubborn and I like to do things on my own. And coming in and getting a mentor in itself was extremely hard for me. I don't know why. I've always been quite independent, trying to do it on my own. It was extremely hard for me to do that because I felt like I was admitting failure or something like that. But after working with mentors and coaches, I refuse to not anymore. Like, I always have mentors. I always have coaches. I always have people in my corner. I learned the hard lesson that I can't do it on my own, right? Like, with my own health, I struggled for 10 years before I finally found somebody to help me. And then all of a sudden, within a couple of months, it was like that, right? Like, just like you were saying before, like, time is everything. And I ended up spending way more effort in money in the long run, trying over and over and over again on my own. I wish, honestly, I would have just went straight into it's okay to get help. And working with you, like, I'm not perfect. A lot of people aren't. Sometimes we have to learn lessons multiple times. Like, I was reiterated that from you, like, having you in my corner completely dramatically changed who I am as a person. And that would have never happened without your help. Right. I think part of what people struggle with is admitting that they do need help. Right. If it was working, whatever goal that you have in life, it doesn't have to be nutrition and fitness. If it was working, you'd be there by now. Right. So kind of putting your ego, I know for me specifically, it was an ego. Like, I needed to put my ego in the back corner. But I know a lot of people struggle with lack of belief. Can I even do this? Why is this even, like, why am I even worth trying? I should just give up and not try. Did you ever struggle with that in your journey?
Not with surviving cancer. I was raised by a very optimistic mother and grandmother.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And I was always taught from an early age to stay outcome framed and not problem framed. So like through the cancer diagnosis, there was never a doubt that I was going to beat this. And if you know anyone going through cancer, or you're personally struggling with cancer, you can't think any other way. You just can't. And you have to set a date into the future in which you look forward to. And you're going to say, I'm getting to this birthday. I'm getting to this anniversary. I'm getting to this event. No matter what happens, I'm getting there. You have to understand, guys, that experiences aren't binary. Experiences aren't good and bad. Everyone loves to think that. They love to think experiences are heaven and hell, positive, negative, good and bad. They're not. Experiences are only given meaning of good and bad by human beings. There's no other species on Earth that is categorizing experience that way. For every other organism, every other animal, it's just an experience. It's the human being decides, is it good or is it bad? Experiences are actually spectral, like a thermometer. So a thermometer is not just hot and cold. There's actually varying degrees. There's varying degrees of experiences in life. And if you're the type of person who's the architect of your own negative narrative, if you are a negative scenario planner, if you are highly neurotic to negative emotions and negative situations, you're going to constantly categorize everything as bad and negative. And again, you're going to create your own neurotic sickness. You're going to create your own hell on earth. You have to understand it's a varying spectral approach. What's hot to Casey might be cold to me. What's cold to Casey might be hot for it's all due to the assignment and of the meaning of experience.
We create our own reality. We literally do. In a nutrition fitness area, it could be tracking your food is evil or tracking your food is freedom. It's how are you labeling it? How are you defining it right now? And that will create your reality. If you think it is bad, it will be bad. But if you think it's freeing, it will be freeing.
Yeah. So success is a formula. You guys have to understand that success is an algorithm and it's a formula for achievement. And if any one person can do it, you can do it. In NLP, which is my favorite thing to study, neurolinguistics programming, there's many presuppositions. One of these presuppositions is if one man or one woman can achieve it, anyone can achieve it. All right. So let's just back up for a second. There has been 111 billion people that have ever lived on Earth. There's 8 billion people living right now on Earth. That means there's 103 billion people before us that lived on this earth. Are you really that ignorant to think that the problem you're currently going through has not been solved by another human being previously? And those behaviors and those thoughts and those results and actions that they displayed, you are fully capable of modeling those behaviors, outcomes, thoughts. Fully. Let me remind you again, there was a man who climbed to the top of Mount Everest with no legs. There's people every single day making what they have been told is impossible possible. So what separates you from them? That has always been my mentality. Unfortunately for me, I was hedonistic. I was constantly committing sins of omission. I knew I had this calling that I could be something special, but I had never actually put in the time or the work or the effort to manifest it.
You are your actions. You are, which I know that you share this algorithm that you're talking about on your podcast, the CircletheW podcast. For the listeners listening in, can you tell them a little bit more about what you speak about on the CircletheW podcast? And the reason why I'm saying this is because I actually share your podcast a lot with our clients that I really think really need it, which is a lot of people. And so far, everybody's like, yo, I needed this. So can you share with people what you talk about on that podcast?
Yeah, before I get into that framework, let's get into a very basic framework from NLP, neuro-linguistics programming. So for you that are listening, we're going to start from right to left, all right? And we're going to go from experience to the result that you want in life. And this is the formula from NLP. You have an experience. The problem is most people go from experience directly to an emotion. All right. Now follow me. Emotions are low resolution solutions that your body produces for problems your mind hasn't figured out yet. And so one of the things that is important is to seek answers first, not emotions. Guys, think about everything that you regret and that you have shame for in your life, every argument, every fight, everything that you ever did that you're like, God, why did I do that? Is because you got emotional. And these are low resolution solutions. So you have to seek answers first. Most people think it goes experience, emotion, but they're skipping the most vital step of all. It goes it goes experience, assigning of belief. That is the step people are forgetting. So experience, assigning of belief into emotions. Emotions drive decisions, decisions drive actions, and actions drive results. You have to memorize and know this formula. Once I learned this, once I saw this, I could then have the reframing of the assignment of belief from the experience. That's why I told you experiences aren't binary. They're not. You are constantly, trillions of times a day, assigning meaning based upon generalizations, deletions, distortions, past experiences. Have you ever met a person and you're like, oh, I don't like that person?
Oh, 100%.
Right. Why? Because that person, from your senses, the way you see, they smell, they act, like how they remind you of someone from the past. And then you immediately apply negative intent on their behalf in an ambiguous situation. You don't know anything about that person. In fact, it happens to me all the time. People treat me like shit because I look like some alpha male with muscular guy that like treated them wrong in the past. Like, I'm not that person. You don't know anything about me. Stop assigning negative intent on my behalf and in a situation you have zero information on. And we do this all the time, guys. Like, catch yourself doing it. You're automatically going to assign a meaning to an experience, yet you don't have all the facts. And let me remind you, there's what you know, what you don't know. There's what you know you don't know, and then there's what you don't know you don't even know about. And there's more of that than there is the other two combined. So stop being the negative architect of every situation in your life. Now, as far as the podcast goes, what we're doing is we're teaching people how to circle the W. And what that means is literally going up to your calendar and circling a W on that day and stating, I won this day. And what we want to do is we want to stack wins incrementally, systematically, depositing into the bank of your highest self. And if you win enough days of the week and you win enough weeks in the month and you look at that calendar, you're literally stacking W's. You're literally like almost like Connect 4 on the calendar. And what that does is it creates momentum. Momentum is mass times velocity. And if I can create mass, the quantity of wins in your life, and velocity, the decision to win right here, right now, today, you will create momentum. You will create inertia so that when you do have a bad day, when it is a dark day, when you do make a failure, you're just going to be an obstacle immune individual and you're going to keep pushing through and it's not going to seem so bad. So the question then becomes, how do we create momentum in our life? Well, you do it just like a car does. A car, what do? You press down on the gas and it creates RPM, rotations per minute of the engine, which makes the car go faster. The car has mass and velocity. Now that car has momentum. You take your foot off the gas, what happens? The car keeps moving forward, right? Because of RPM. So we want to take the same framework. And guys, there's guesswork, there's hard work, and there's a framework, right? So I don't like to guess. If you're guessing at your diet, if you're guessing at your finances, your communication, your relationships, guess what? It's going to take a lot longer for you to get results. I hate that. I want results right now. You got hard work. My mom worked their ass off. My dad worked their ass off. They ain't got nothing. So it ain't hard work. So you need a framework. A framework is defined as a systemized process that gets you a consistent result. There's frameworks for everything, positively and negatively, right? So we want this framework applied in our life. R stands for result, P stands for purpose, and M stands for massive action plan. Now, when we're talking about the result, you have to get crystal clear clarity on what you actually want. People say, oh, I want more money. Great, here's $1. Get out of my face. It's more money. But when I'm talking about more money, I'm talking about, what kind of car are you driving on the way to the bank? What's the weather like? What's the song playing on the radio? How does the steering wheel feel? When you go into the bank, what bank is it? What does the teller look like? What kind of lollipops do they have sitting on the counter? When you go to deposit or withdraw that $1 million, you have to have that type of clarity. Let me give you an example. I want to become a professional bodybuilder. I know every single detail of that vision. And let me remind you, if you can create the vision in your mind, you're fully capable of creating the vision in physical reality. There's no more beautiful form of creativity than to create a new outcome in the face of adversity. It is the most beautiful thing in the world. And so you have to have that type of crystal clear clarity. I know when I turn pro, I know what the stage looks like. I know the cool touch of the stage floor on my bare foot. I know what the smell of the tanning spray smells like. I know what the warmth of the lights on the stage. I know what the audience looks like. I know when I'm going to run off stage and hug my mother and hug my girlfriend. I know I have dreamed and fantasized about this vision to the 10th degree. All right. So you have to have R. You have to have the result and get super crystal clear on it. 2, you have to have your P, your purpose. What is your purpose? Your purpose is your emotional driver. My purpose is to keep my promise to God. I am unwilling to break that for anyone, for anything. My other purpose, I have many purposes. One of my purposes is to buy my mom a horse farm. I want to be able to do that, one that she doesn't have to work. I'm unwilling to quit working until I accomplish that goal. And lastly, you have to have M. M is your massive action plan, all right? It's your map. And currently, guys, you have a map. Your map is from New York to Miami. The problem is you're in California. And so you have a map that you're operating off of, but it's the wrong map. It's simply the wrong map. And let me remind you guys that people don't fail. Skill sets fail. They have the wrong map. They have the wrong massive action plan. So very simply, without turning this into a Circle the W podcast, these are some of the things that we talk about and the frameworks that we use to create daily actionable steps so you can move forward on towards the pathway of your highest self.
Which, by the way, guys, if you haven't listened to his podcast, I 100% go do it now. After you're done listening to this, go listen to him, because many of times have I listened to his podcast and got the kick in the ass that I needed, a mental shift that I needed. It's really, really great to hear Nick talking about it. And I think what he does best is talking about it in real life circumstances where you're like, oh, because again, like I said at the beginning, we speak in stories. He takes all this information that can be a little bit overwhelming, doesn't stick for people, and he does a really great way of making sure it sticks for you, where you're like, I feel heard. I've had multiple clients actually be like, is he talking directly to me? Because I feel like he is. Lars.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which, by the way, he's still with us, kicking strong.
Awesome.
Love me some Lars. He still is just
hi,
I'm
Lars.
listening. Yeah. By the way, hi, Lars. He's still listening to your podcast. And I remember one time he texted me and he was like, Casey, his last podcast, I'm crying. I needed to hear it. And for those of you that don't know Lars's story, he joined in because he needed a life-altering surgery. He had major back problems that was keeping him from being able to work. And he was a business owner. He worked in the movie industry with lighting. He had his own crew, his own business. He also was providing for kids and his wife. And he couldn't get that surgery he needed to start moving again until he lost a ton of weight, more than what I would ever have supported. But apparently within the healthcare system that he's in Sweden right now, he had to be at a certain weight. There was a cutoff time. And if he didn't make that cutoff time, he would have to wait another year, 6 months to a year, which is the amount of pain that we was in. We were like, no. So we came together, did pro bono work for him, got him to get that life-altering surgery. And now he's in rehab and getting back to work. He's telling me he's getting his life back together and things like that. So it's, and he was listening to your podcast at some of the hardest times, like right when it was like, this, when it comes to extreme dieting, I like in terms of long-term things, not the best fan, but when you are pushing your body at that point, it screws with you mentally. You do need a lot of support, and your podcast was the support that he needed a lot of times. So thank you for everything that you share.
Yeah, thank you. Warms my heart to know that Lars is an incredible human being, and I just want to credit you and your whole team for helping him through that, because that was very kind of you guys to do. Not a lot of people would have done that, and I just have massive respect for both of your company, you and Lars, for sticking it through. And if you're listening to this, brother, we wish you the best.
Team Lars. We have a hashtag Team Lars.
Love it.
We love us some Lars. He's actually kind of become like our mascot a little bit.
Yeah.
He's such a great guy. And I will say this, Nick, like your whole story of overcoming a life of drugs and drinking and just then getting diagnosed with cancer, and not just kind of sort of cancer, but like, I didn't know it was that extreme. I've never heard that from you going that in depth in terms of like 8% survival rate and getting the max dosage. I didn't hear that. I mean, cancer is in no way, any form, great, but that's a huge thing to overcome. And then that wasn't the end. You hit rock bottom, and then you overcame everything, medical debt, everything, like just this huge journey. Right. And you turn that around, you found your new why, right? And now you're making impact in people's lives, which, by the way, guys, again, like what he said before, he's about 6 months away from claiming his pro card, which I will be following for bodybuilding. He also makes massive amount of impact in terms of other coaches trying to make impact in other people's lives, right? Talk about impact. When you impact people that impact other people, that's the best way. And you're also a very successful speaker. You've spoken on stage with some extremely successful, rightfully so. So like people like Jason Phillips, the Hermosis, Ed Milet. I know Sal and Adam were on stage as well for Mind Pump. I know you are also going to be speaking on stage again. Every single time that I hear you speak on stage, it's like everybody feels it, chills, right? Just because what you have to say is so impactful. Like, it's such an inspiring story, such an impactful story. I do have one more question for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Right? Mm-hmm. Would you change anything in your whole journey? Is there anything that you would have changed?
Man, would I change anything? People tell you not to have regrets. I definitely have regrets because I hurt people. And the person that I am today, I regret those things. As far as my own personal journey, one of the things that you learn through cancer, you watch other cancer patients, like one of the greatest lessons cancer taught me was how to be sympathetic and empathetic in your pain. Mm-hmm. And there was a long time where I was so angry at the world for having this dream of being a professional athlete that I had. That was a promise I made my mom. My mom had me when she was 18. We didn't have much. I promised her when I was 8 years old that I would become a professional athlete. I'd buy her the farm. I'd buy her the house. I'd buy her all of the things. And here I am 32 years later. I'm about to turn, not about to turn, I am 40 now. I'm 25 at heart. And I'm still trying to make that dream come true. And so would I change anything? No, because it's going to allow me to accomplish what I wanted to do and the promise that I made to my mom. And again, cancer didn't happen to me. It happened for me. And you can choose to be wounded or you can choose to be wise. You can choose to be a victim or you can choose to be rewarded. There's a choice. I know cancer survivors that just got done with lung cancer and they're puffing down a pack of smokes. Like, they learned nothing from the pain. There's so much potential, guys. No matter what you're going through currently in your life, I'm telling you right now, you can make a decision to go to bed tonight and wake up the person that you want to be. It's just a decision. Stop overcomplicating it. Stop with the negative talk tracks in your mind. Stop being a naysayer about your own potential. If I can do it, if this poor farm boy can do it, and by the way, I just bought my first house at the age of 40. I'm about to become a professional athlete at the age of 40. You know, I finally have the financial freedom that I want in my life, but that took me to the age of 40. I don't care how young or how old you are listening to this. You can do it. You just have to make a decision.
Power's in your hands. Do you have one final thing that you want to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, don't do what I did. Don't wait till rock bottom. Please don't wait.
Yeah.
I recently lost a high school friend.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And she was 38 years old. She had 3 beautiful daughters. And she had 7 months. That's it. Diagnosed with cancer. 7 months later, you're gone. You don't need to hit rock bottom. You don't need to go bankrupt. You don't need to go to jail. You don't need to get a DUI. You don't need to lose your home. You don't need to get evicted. You don't need to get arrested. You don't need chaos in your life. You don't have to hit rock bottom. You don't. You know, so many of us think that only other people die. And we all think life is really short. But let me tell you, life can also be really long and really hard. You can make a choice. When I tell you, you can go to bed tonight and you can wake up the person that you want to be tomorrow, you can. You got a chance and you got a choice when you woke up this morning. What are you going to do with that choice? And what are you going to do with that chance? It's the greatest gift you get.
That's beautiful. It's stories like these that just it's the kick in the ass that I need to keep taking that preventive approach in terms of health too. Like you're talking about taking action with that kind of stuff in your friend, which I'm so sorry to hear. Like a lot of the stuff can be caught early. Don't let you hitting rock bottom, whether it's in life or your health, for you to create change. I know there's some people like me that are pretty stubborn, and sometimes that does need to happen. And like you said before, it's neither good or bad. Sometimes it's just your journey, but you do have a choice. And I love that. I love that message. So Nick, thank you so much for coming on and telling your story. Thank you so much for, again, every single time I've heard the stories multiple times, I learned a few things, but I keep getting like chills and I keep being like, trying not to go past the mic and getting drawn in on these conversations. It's phenomenal. Always enjoy having you on. So before we let you go, can you tell people where they can find you and where to contact you?
Absolutely. Social media, I'm on Instagram, on TikTok. It's just my first name, last name, Nick Ross Speaks, all one word. You can find me there. And then the podcast is on all major platforms. It's just called Circle the W. And I'd love if you guys can help and support and share. If this has impacted you in any way, shape, or form, it would mean the world to me for you guys to share, because as we know, we're living in a really crazy world right now where a lot of people are suffering. And if this can help someone, it would mean the world to Casey and I. If you could just 100%. Get on your phone right now, go into the podcast, hit the share button, and send it to someone that needs to hear it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nick. And by the way, guys, everything that he mentioned, I'll do it in the show notes below so you can get that super easy. But again, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for your time and attention. It means more than you know. Have a great day. Until next time.